There is a coronation stone at Kingston-upon-Thames, which marks the spot where English kings were crowned 1,000 years ago. The quiet centuries have passed over the face of that still honoured stone, but its story is similar to the tale written in the mould of our British countryside and country towns. The character of repose and order which the country reflects, does it not proceed from the ordered mind and heart of people? Ancient walls tell of old things reverenced by later generations, of medieval castles preserved and occupied for their traditions and associations, and symbolically of old forms and customs assimilated and adapted to serve new needs and standards. Kings there have been in England and Scotland for 1,500 years, and a king there still is in Britain. Like the aging walls of Windsor Castle, monarchy has mellowed, and with the national genius for ordered change, merged with democracy to produce a new old edifice to which the old traditions attach. May we date back the beginning of this new era in monarchy exactly 100 years. In 1837, there came a young queen to the throne, and popular monarchy as we know it began. By the time that the old queen died, full of years, after the longest reign in British history, the pattern was evolved. King Edward VII gave it his own imprint. His diplomatic qualities, Edward the Peacemaker, stand out in relief to posterity, but wasn't he Teddy to the crowds of his generation? Queen Alexandra shared his popularity, and note that in the scheme of popular monarchy, the Queen Consort plays as important a role as the sovereign himself. This has been made abundantly clear in our own time. Thus, in the great tradition of British queens, not Victoria, not Alexandra have surpassed the contribution of our own Queen Mary. For the 26 years of that eventful reign, Queen Mary, equally with King George, set the example and sustained the part of democratic royalty, of which we can at present conceive no higher expression. If we may pause a little longer at Windsor Castle, where these portraits hang, perhaps I may dwell on the importance of old associations in the national development. William the Conqueror built a fort on the site in 1070, and the royal family has resided here ever since. So was it surprising that King George V adopted the family name of Windsor? Tradition, which is the theme of my commentary, is in every brick and stone. Windsor is the historic seat of the royal family, but the birthplace of our kings has usually been elsewhere, at Sandringham, for instance. Sandringham was bought by King Edward VII in 1861 when he was Prince of Wales. It reflects the tranquil aspect of the national character, a country home where the king is a squire. Queen Alexandra loved this place, and here was her summer house, the Queen's Rest. King George VI was born on the estate at York Cottage, where his father and mother lived as Duke and Duchess of York. Logic leads us to Buckingham Palace, and if I have dallied by the way, it is to give you the opportunity in these almost the first Technicolor pictures to be taken in England to see something in colour of the glorious background to the coronation story. Coronation, after all, is but the symbol of our faith in the monarchy, of which these homes are the environment. The black and white films will miss the colour of these pictures. Even we, in the pomp and magnitude of the procession, may overlook the colour detail of these familiar landmarks unless I draw attention to them now. The coach is paraded ready at the palace, and the postilions accustom the royal greys to the forthcoming drive. The coach, with its allegorical paintings by Cipriani, seldom makes so long a journey as the 6 miles of coronation route. Built for George III in 1761, just after Britain's victories in France and India, it represents the triumphal chariot of its time. The figures are tritons signifying sea power. Months of skilled handiwork have gone into the completion of the coronation robes, in which Abbey guests, among them the Duke and Duchess of Marlborough, pose especially for this film. The Duke and Duchess of Sutherland shows how the robes of the highest rank in the peerage are distinguished by 4 rows of black ermine. The tiara worn by the Marchioness of Dufferin Ava will be surmounted by a coronet after the Queen is crowned. Before the ceremony, peers and peeresses carry their coronets. Notice that the Earl and Countess of Bessborough have 3 rows of black ermine on their robes. A young page, Master Charles Vyner, attends the Duke of Richmond and Gordon in the Abbey by special privilege. The whole burden of the secular arrangements for the ceremony falls on the Duke of Norfolk, Earl Marshal, to whose patient and helpful attitude all those concerned in the occasion bear witness. Supreme him ecclesiastically is, of course, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who performs the holy ritual of coronation. There remains only the regalia to be viewed before the procession starts. Symbolism unites with tradition in these priceless jewels. The two sceptres, the Queen's and the King's with doves, stand for equity, for majesty, the orb. The sword of state represents armed might. With oil from the ampulla, or golden eagle, the spoon is filled to perform the historic rite of anointing. But of course, the crowns dominate the collection. For his drive through the streets, the King assumes the Imperial State Crown with the Cullinan diamond in the rim. St. Edward's crown, which is placed on his head during the ceremony, is worn by the King at no other time. It is the crown of England. But it is more than that. The symbol of kingship now stands for the unity of an empire, of which the King is the only constitutional link. And so we go to the King's crowning. Martial music fills the ear, and through London march the troops of distant countries, far dominions of the empire, as well as the more familiar uniforms. Enthusiasm overflows and cheers wildly at everything. When there is a real object to cheer, like the carriage conveying the little princesses to Westminster, enthusiasm becomes positive emotion. Notice that Princess Margaret Rose is just big enough to peer out of the window at the sea of friendly faces. The Earl Marshal awaits them, and from an elevated position we can see the little party set down at the specially built annex to Westminster Abbey. Big Ben overlooks the unfamiliar scene, for London along the procession route is transformed, and another carriage approaches which is greeted with a special fervour. Within her glass coach, Queen Mary may witness the emotion which her appearance never fails to stir. Still the exemplar of regal dignity, Her Majesty drives in her own procession to the Abbey. She alights and passes inside wearing a crown, the first Queen of England to see her son's coronation. And to take their place at that solemn rite, King George and Queen Elizabeth are in the meanwhile beginning their triumphal progress in the state coach. The biggest crowd ever collected for a single event lines the route. What would you have given for a seat in Westminster Hospital with its commanding position opposite the entrance to the cathedral? The old abbey, founded by Edward the Confessor, has been the scene of every coronation since his day, except two. Picturesque bodies of men, such as the Yeoman of the Guard, precede the coach marching afoot, but mainly it is the horse's day. No hint of the internal combustion engine. So strong is tradition that in this day and age, the modern form of transport has no part in the world's greatest secular ceremony. In their medieval attire, the King and Queen approach the Abbey, the King wearing his cap of state. The Duke of Norfolk, Earl Marshal, awaits them as they step into the entrance hall. And the royal standard is flown over the Abbey. Of the scene within, the artist's impression gives a vivid rendering. The recognition, when the King is presented to his subjects by the Archbishop, who in this next view is placing the crown of St. Edward on his head. Among the subsequent rites performed is the act of homage by the peers. The coronation is over. The event so long anticipated and prepared has passed into history to make its contribution to that store of tradition from whence it arose. The King, crowned and anointed, re-enters his coach. With his chosen Queen, he goes on his way to receive the cheers of subjects, wishing him happy and glorious.
and the hour, and almost king's weather for the great occasion. The rain of the previous days has miraculously turned to sunshine as the centuries-old coach turns out of the gates of Buckingham Palace, carrying its two royal occupants to the most tremendous day of their lives. To their coronation they ride, and have you ever seen a more magnificent picture of its kind, or one more memorable, than this vision through the glass window as the sweep of the coach brings the king and the queen full face to the camera's eye? It is the traditional progress along the historic route to the Abbey, lined by tens of thousands of eager subjects. The king wears his cap of state, the queen, clad in her royal robes, bows gracious acknowledgement of the fervent tumult of the multitude. Preceding the royal coach have gone the prime ministers of the empire, cheered by spectators along the Mall. And presently, at Westminster Abbey, the hearts of solicitous subjects have been stirred by a brief glimpse of the little princesses alighting at the royal entrance. Here, the Earl Marshal, the Duke of Norfolk, awaits the arrival in turn of each royal person. And whatever greetings it was his privilege to offer is echoed a millionfold in welcoming Queen Mary, whose glass coach has been everywhere the object of affectionate demonstration. The Queen Mother passes within, the first crowned queen to attend her son's coronation. So, the scene is set for the advent of the state coach itself, turning from Admiralty Arch through Trafalgar Square into Whitehall, which alone of London's thoroughfares can have seen greater crowds than today's. Along the road of national homage, where each year the king renews for his country its abiding ideals of peace and memory of those who died in the Great War. Past the senator, in solemn majesty moves the coach, and the charming and gracious pair whom the world delights to honor this day draw near for their coronation. The coach stops, and the king alights. The queen follows him into the specially built annex to the Abbey, and the tidings that King George and Queen Elizabeth have come to their crowning are signalled by the royal standard flying overhead. And the king is crowned within the Abbey, where it is the special privilege of Movietone to record the historic and religious scene. The 900-year-old ritual is observed with traditional fidelity. The Dean of Westminster brings from the altar the crown of St. Edward, the crown of England to the Archbishop of Canterbury, who, picking it up with scrupulous regard, carries it to the king, sitting robed in cloth of gold on St. Edward's chair. In form, he crowns King George VI, and the camera catches those significant moments when the king rests, sceptres in hand, crown on his head. The king has been crowned, and the peers of his realm have donned their coronets. in the sight of his family, his peers and his commons, the king has been crowned. We may imagine the emotions of Queen Mary as she leaves the Abbey with her granddaughters, having watched the coronation of her son. Let us give a thought, too, for the feelings of our King and Queen, consecrated in 2 hours of ancient symbolism to their great and lifelong task. And as the Queen gathers her beautiful dress to step into the state coach, the clouds gather also, as if to reinforce the stern note of the burdens laid upon their heads with the crowns which now adorn them. So, this great old abbey has staged another coronation, and from the sanctuary beneath its tall towers, the procession begins the long drive back to Buckingham Palace. On this drive, the procession is led by a great array of troops, men from every country of the empire. You will of course recognize the Duchess of Gloucester with the Duchess of Kent beside her. Only Nelson on his column has elbow room in Trafalgar Square. There can't be any doubt that it's the biggest crowd that London has ever known. Queen Maud of Norway and the Princess Royal ride with Lord Lascelles. And when the route reaches Piccadilly Circus, what a spectacle meets the gaze. If you recall that many of these people have waited here for more than 12 hours for their minutes of exaltation, it should kill the old idea that we're an unemotional race. This return drive, Queen Mary has the little princesses with her in the glass coach, and could a greater stimulant to public enthusiasm have been designed? No wonder that rain fails to still the voice of melody. Crowds upon crowds upon crowds. You will read that millions were present, but who can determine with any accuracy how many spectators are here today? And all have one supreme focus for their enthusiasm. The state coach brings its happy occupants back home to Buckingham Palace, and those who saw the start of the triumphal progress 5 hours before witness its completion. They witness more than that. For them is that delightful picture of the crowned king and queen on the balcony with their attendants and family around them. With their family, for there are the little princesses on the right coming up to share the acclamations. But the king is looking round for someone, and maybe the crowd is calling for her too. Queen Mary is drawn into the family group, and with this study you will wish me to conclude our coronation picture, saying as fervently as I do, God save them all, God bless them all.